Today on the CRISS CROSS Cinema Podcast, a hidden base, a feisty princess, and a rebel struggle in a place far, far away. But are we talking about Star Wars or the Hidden Fortress? On the CRISS CROSS Cinema Podcast.
The day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
You gotta keep breathing, because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Hello and welcome to the CRISS CROSS Cinema Podcast, where we crisscross cinema history to find connections you may have never recognized. Today's first film, The Hidden Fortress, 1959, directed by Akira Kurosawa, directly inspired George Lucas in the making of his own epic, Star Wars, 1977. I am Aaron Wilson, writer, director, and lifelong Star Wars fan.
And I'm Anna Marie Wilson, mom, nurse midwife, and fan of movies. I also have spent some time in Japan over almost 2 years.
And I've spent some time in space. That's a lie.
I'm Sarah DeForest. I love movies, had never seen The Hidden Fortress, so really happy that I was led to watch it. And very interested in anything to do with Star Wars. So I think this is a great combination for me. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Again, today, just as always, we'll review our two films, and then we go crisscross to compare and contrast. But first, Anna, what media has influenced you recently?
Recently, we watched the recent Hawkeye TV series.
And Joseph said that Samuel really liked it. Yeah.
Samuel, my 2-year-old son, really liked watching Hawkeye and can even say, Hawkeye. And then most of the other media is just, I like to listen to books, or if I'm not feeling well, then I'll throw up some Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I'll throw on some Mickey Mouse.
Okay. I thought you were saying throw up.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
But I'll put up on the TV.
That's what we all do when we're not well.
The Mickey Mouse Clubhouse for Samuel.
Yeah.
So yeah, mouse.
Okay, Sarah, what have you been watching?
Well, when I found out that I was going to be working on this podcast, I watched Hidden Fortress, and then after I'd seen it, I thought, well, I've known of Akira Kurosawa forever, and I know of The Seven Samurai, and I've never watched it, so I watched it. And then also recently I watched a series that was, I'm not sure what channel it's on, but anyway, it's called Dark Reigns, and it's set in the 1970s on the Navajo reservation, in a crime scene type of thing. So just some various interesting, not connected types of things, but enjoying them.
Is that a series?
Yeah. It is, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When was it made?
I want to say 2022, so I think there's still going to be another season of it or something. I think there is.
They're actually playing that at the Phoenix Screenwriters Association yearly event, or their conference.
Cool.
That they're doing that I'm not at because we're filming this right now.
Oh.
But anyway.
What would they show? Just one episode? Or what?
Probably just one episode, and the writer would talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I really enjoyed it. The
I'll
funny
have to
thing, though,
watch
too,
it.
is all these scenes, it's supposed to be taking place in Arizona, and it's filmed in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Because they have the incentives, and we didn't have them right away, probably then, So, but maybe that'll change, get more filmmaking going on here.
Yeah, it should. I think they changed the incentive recently, but yeah. Anyway, so what I've been watching, Light and Magic is the first one, which is about industrial light and magic, which is on Disney Plus, and it's a show that goes through how industrial light and magic was founded, and it was to make Star Wars, because the technology to make it at the time didn't exist. And actually, in the 50s, they were making not ILM, but another company was making commercials, and that was the closest thing they had to the visual effects that they had for ILM. And so a lot of people came from there, and they thought they had no jobs because that closed down because it became out of fashion to do effects like that. And like Ray Harryhausen and those kind of things were the kind of the last of it, but Star Wars brought it back, and they advanced it a lot further with motion control, which is where you can take a camera and do the same move over and over again, exactly the same. And so you get the instead of the spaceships moving, the camera moves, so it looks like it's swooping past the camera, and you can do different passes of it. So you do one for like the ship itself, and then you turn off the lights and turn on the engine lights, and then you get the engine lights for one pass. And then just you can do multiple passes to get different elements, and then you combine them and put it on a space background, and there you've got your spaceships. But
That's so amazing, huh?
yeah, that stuff fascinated me when I was a kid. I mean, it still does, but now that I know how it's done, I don't know, the magic is still there, but it's just a bit old hat now. But watching that was kind of brought some of the magic back. Also, MASH. We were just watching that right before this recording, and
MASH, the
old TV show from the 60s.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It seems like every episode is basically Hawkeye gets himself in trouble, and he gets more and more in trouble, and you're like, oh, how is he going to get out of this? And then he shows how good a doctor he is at the end of it, and they're like, okay, everything's forgiven. And that's kind of the dynamic of that show, like Hawkeye's character.
Right.
And Joseph was pointing to the TV when Samuel came in. He's like, look, Hawkeye. And he's like, oh, Hawkeye. It's funny. Not the same Hawkeye he's used to. But yeah.
And it's only like the Disney Hawkeye is only, I don't know, 6, 9 episodes. It's not very many episodes. And so like I'm surprised, and usually he gets bored halfway through anyway, but he apparently liked it enough to...
Me too, Samuel.
Apparently liked it enough to learn how to say Hawkeye, so and ask for it later.
And so that's what we've been watching. Just as always, we'll be diving deep. Fair warning, here there be spoilers. And now our review of The Hidden Fortress. Okay, so this movie opens in a very interesting way on 2 peasants running away. They're like just wandering along, and there's something behind them that they're running away from. And it turns out there's been a battle that's been going on. And this really weird-faced samurai, I think, runs up in front of the camera, and a bunch of horses are herd behind, and they come up and they kill that samurai and then run off. So you get a sense of there's a battle that's just been happening, and we're kind of dropped in this pre-existing struggle, and these 2 characters are who we're following. So this is, I hate to give away our crisscross things, but I'm probably going to point them all out as we go along. This is R2-D2 and C-3PO and Star Wars.
Yeah.
This is the main influence that George Lucas was inspired by, of introducing the lowest characters in the movie and having them be the perspective characters. And for Hidden Fortress, it's for the entire movie.
Yeah.
But,
just the way that it reminded me of that, where when the 2 in Hidden Fortress, they're heading out across the desert and everything, and then in Star Wars 2, after they land, in the after they land in the ship and everything, and they're out and they're just walking across the desert and all,
And they're bickering.
yeah, that back and forth and everything, and they're friends, but they're at each other all the time. And
at first, I was thinking that the taller one, because he seemed more. The shorter one seemed less courageous, so I thought, oh, he's the C-3PO, and the taller one is the R2-D2. But it turns out they're both pretty cowardly in this movie. So, but
Yeah, they are.
for at least like the first act, we're left kind of in the dark. We know just as much as these guys do, but you kind of feel fine about it because these characters don't know anything either. Like they wander in and out of these battles and they get separated at certain points and then get reunited. And there's like this one battle that's on these steps that they're like, oh no, this is the end, we're going to die. And then they look up and all the soldiers have passed and they're like, oh.
You get introduced fairly early on, though, to their motivating factor of the entire movie, which is money.
Money.
Gold.
Yep. Go for
Gold.
gold.
With when they separate, they both get recruited into being slaves for the winning opposition, I guess, of the two forces at play. And they are digging them under the palace because apparently there's 200 gold pieces of gold.
They call them moles, and they're like, dig moles, and then you'll earn your right to be men again, or something like that. And I was thinking that was going to be the entire movie of this is the hidden fortress that they're in, and they've got to dig to get the gold, but like that goes out of the window pretty quick.
They escape from being slaves fairly quickly, and they're trying to survive on their own and stumble upon gold.
Yeah, they're just in the. And this scene reminded me of Lord of the Rings, the potato scene.
Yeah.
But them in the wilderness with the frying pan, and they stumble upon a stick that has gold inside it. And they're like, what? And then they start looking in all the sticks. And I think this is when they encounter the samurai general that comes in. And played by, what is his first name? Anyway, Mifune, the Akira Kurosawa's main guy that he used for most of his movies. And Tofiro Mifune, I don't remember. Anyway, it starts with a T. He's kind of, I was trying to get a peg on him of like, is he a character in Star Wars? And I didn't really see any to begin with, but I don't know, maybe at a certain point we can peg it. But then they find a princess, which actually there's a sign in the town that says reward princess. So that's like the Empire is looking for the princess, basically.
Because it's a different army or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's 3 different factions, I think, that are involved in the conflict. And
then is one faction kind of neutral in the conflict, like the place that they're trying to go to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the princess also, when they had her in town, there was that whole thing with switching.
Yeah.
Right? But then what it comes down to is they don't want to be, sacrificed or whatever. One doesn't want the other one to be sacrificed for her and stuff like that too. But then the other one, I think, runs away, or maybe she was already hidden away. They're trying to get her so people don't know where she is.
Well, so where we come in is they stumble upon the princess and don't know that it's the princess, but she has been hidden away by the general for some time, and the general's sister offered herself as sacrifice, and so she is turned in for the reward as the princess and is executed.
Okay.
And we missed a bit here of they go up to this hill and then they see these buildings down there and it's like it's a hidden fortress. And I was imagining the hidden fortress was going to be the bad guy's place, but it's actually this is where we get another parallel with Star Wars. It's a hidden base, hidden rebel base.
Right.
Yeah, basically.
And so that's the hidden fortress, and that's where Mifune's character lives. And that's where they meet the princess. And I think they strike a deal at this point that you can keep all the gold if you help us, or something like that. So, and that's why they stay along. But
Well, the general sees the two for what they really are, just selfish.
yeah,
Low life.
And he says he's trying to motivate them with gold so that they'll help them out.
And he's like, I was going to kill him right off the bat, but it was actually their idea to run away through enemy territory to get
That's
to
right,
our
yeah.
allies' place, where our allies offered refuge for the princess. Instead of trying to go directly from her now overrun land
Yeah.
and trying to get to their allies' land.
So they kind of have this little shortcut to get across the border and get out of this conflict.
And he decides, okay, they actually have a fairly good idea, so we're going to keep them around, and they can be like our mules. And that'll be the only reason why they stick around, too, is because they'll be the ones carrying the gold.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting, probably just coincidence that the battle plans come from the C-3PO and R2-D2.
Yeah.
So,
But what comes next, we see throughout the entire movie of they're really not honorable, and they're trying to just run off with the money at any chance that they get. But we see them that they're really not very clever, and they're bumbling around.
Yeah.
They're like acting way suspicious. And so the enemy people are like, why are you acting so suspicious?
Yeah, there's a part where near the end where it's like, don't be suspicious, and immediately they're like, and I thought of the meme from Parks and Rec where they're like dancing through the graveyard. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah, they're horribly suspicious.
Yes.
So they make their plan. The princess decides to be mute. So even the two lowlifes don't know that she's the princess still.
Yeah, but before they do this, though, there's a moment where, after they make the plans in the cave, where we first figure out like what the dynamic is between him and the princess and this other older lady that's, I guess, basically just there for exposition. She's like the head of this rebel force, or I mean, they're like the smaller, weaker force that's not in power at the moment, and they're like, we raised her as a boy, so she never cries, and then she walks out onto the overlook and is looking out, and it has the flag with the moon on it over her face as she's crying, and it's like, okay, like this is what she cares about type thing. And so there we have our Princess Leia figure. And as she first meets the C-3PO and R2-D2 stand-ins, they see her and she's like a 16-year-old girl, and they're like, and they're very messed up little guys, so they're trying to take advantage of her, and she like takes out a stick and is like whacking them away, and like uses all the branches in the forest to chase them off. And so she's got that feisty attitude that Princess Leia has. But then we get to the main conflict or the main drive of the story is they're going to try to cross that border, and they've got the cart full of wood, and those two that's the only reason they're there, but they're helping. And then so she's playing mute, and she's also playing a lower class person so that she can get past everybody without them knowing she's the princess. It's kind of hard to follow the plot in this one more than Star Wars, because it's kind of a looser structure. Like it's a little more episodic, I'd say. Like the whole thing with the gold and the fortress, I don't know if that went anywhere, and I don't know, just different little side tangents that don't seem to be tied into the main.
What do you mean the gold in the fortress?
Like where they're moles, that part where they're digging the gold, and then all of a sudden, that part's gone.
I think that was just to set up that there is gold that the enemy is trying to discover under the palace.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So then they're on the road, on their way to
They get
across
to the border.
Yeah, get to the border.
And the general goes out and is trying to, I don't know whether to call him general or samurai, because he's a samurai
the
general.
general. So
he's a samurai general.
Yeah. So basically at this point, I hadn't recognized what he, or if he stood in for anybody, because I was thinking Han Solo, but I'm like, that doesn't really fit. But then in an article I saw, actually multiple articles, it pointed out that he's like Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
So he's the older general that's
That's what I
seen
would-
more and protecting the princess on the way. But the biggest difference between that and Star Wars being there is no Luke character. So there's no younger character. In fact, in Star Wars, they were going to have. He was originally going to be closer to Hidden Fortress, where it was just Obi-Wan and the princess going, and Luke was not a part of it yet. So, but,
Well, he goes to try and look
Yeah.
out and kind of get the lay of the land, and the princess is mute,
Yeah.
sitting there, and the two guys are like, "Now's our chance," and so they try and take the horses and run off and cross the border just over the river, just through the river instead of over the checkpoint. But there are enemy guards on the border of the river, and obviously they're being very suspicious because they don't know how to not be suspicious.
Yeah.
And so the guards run them off, and the princess also kind of saves the day there again by coming back and getting the horses back and stuff.
yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm remembering this part. So it's when they. Yeah, they're saying we're gonna sneak these away. Like she's deaf because she's mute, and it's like, okay, that's not how that works. But but then when the general comes back, he tells them their plan, and he's like, oh, those idiots, and then they try to get the horses back and that whole deal. And then at what point is the fortress burned?
At that point.
Okay.
So
yeah.
at that point, they tried to cross over the water, and the general's like, okay, let's go back, reconvene, and talk about this, look at this again. But when they go back, and the fortress is burned, and so they're like, okay, we got to cross now. And so they go to the bridge and cross, just trying to look like normal people would.
Yeah.
And they're able to get back by. But very shortly thereafter, the border crossing general is informed to watch for people with a pile of wood and a girl and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which is interesting because they'll change it up in a minute. But that's a really good plot point of them burning the fortress. And they don't have that in Star Wars, but I was thinking about it, and they do have a similar thing at the beginning of Last Jedi, where they destroy the base at the beginning of the thing, and it's kind of the same plot of like they're trying to get away, but
They do kind of have it in Star Wars with
blowing up Alderaan.
blowing up
Yeah.
Alderaan,
But it's
because
not-
that was the original
Yeah,
convening point.
yeah. So it does do the same thing for the plot, but it's not the hidden base that they're trying to find. Yeah, I wrote the peasants are despicable.
They stay the night, and another person sees their fine horses and buys them off of them. And they also pick up a girl from the inn.
Yeah, is that the slave girl? Yeah.
He buys from the inn a slave girl, which was being treated poorly. And the princess, you see the princess watching and seeing how she's being treated horribly. And she tells the general, we're buying this girl. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we
And
are.
there's a really good line there where she's like, you can make me mute, but you can't make my heart mute. And then so now they've changed up the thing. And
Unbeknownst to them.
There's no horses now, and they're pulling the cart, the two peasants, and they're like, hey, we're the horses now. And then the samurai come up to check their cart, and they're like, have you seen, what was it? Four people, or anyway, whatever it was, 2 horses and a whatever. And it's like, no. And then they run off back down the road, but then they run back and it's like, oh crap. Like,
I think this is them.
and then they start acting suspicious and start turning the cart around. And it's
Right.
no, play it cool. And they're like, we don't know how to play it cool. And then, so then Mifune's character, I really need to say his real name, but I can't remember it starts with a K. Anyway, the general, he takes out his sword and starts chopping at these guys, and he kills 2 of them, but 2 get away on their horses, and they're like, oh crap, like they're going to tell somebody. So he gets on the horse and chases them down the road. And this is right when my dad came in, and he was enthralled by this part, as it's probably the most enthralling part of the movie. But then, so he kills one of them, and he's trying his dangdest to get the other guy, and he gets him, but like right before the gates to this fortress that he goes inside, and like just the momentum of the horse doesn't stop before he's in the fortress, and it's like, oh crap. But then it turns out the general of this fortress is a former guy that he fought against in battle, and so he doesn't say like, oh, kill him right away. Like, they're, in fact, I think he says to his men, like, you don't stand a chance against this guy. And so he makes this duel between the 2 of them, and they fight with spears. And that fight goes on pretty long. And then, but Mifune, or whatever the crap his real name is.
Makabe.
Oh, Makabe. Okay. Yeah. I was thinking Kenobi subconsciously. Yeah, but Makabe, he's so he breaks the other guy's spear in half. He's like, oh, you've won. And then he starts to walk off, and he basically leaves him there. And that's going to come up later. But and then is this the part where they start joining the fire ceremony procession? Yeah. They're like, we can sneak. It's the dumbest thing ever. Yeah. They're like, we can sneak into this.
It's a fire festival,
people. And it's like, it's a fire festival. They're gonna burn the wood. Mm-hmm. But they do a suspense thing where the guys are coming to find the peasants with the wood, because they're like, we hear they hide the gold inside the wood. And so then they start checking like all the wood in this procession, and they don't find these guys, even though they're being very suspicious. They're
like trying to turn back and forth and back and forth.
But they can't see the forest for the trees. No pun intended with the sticks. But anyway, so they get to the festival, and they're like singing this song that's like, what is it? Like, if a man dies, throw him, or no, what is the life of a man? Like, throw him in the fire or something like that. And all that like stuff. All these lyrics that will come up later. And, these guys try to sneak away with the cart of wood, and the people running the thing are like, hey, no, put it in the fire. Yeah, they're like, oh, no.
And they're about to
like,
get
don't
called
be stingy.
Until Makabe comes back and he's like, put it in the fire.
Yeah, he just throws it in the fire. Yeah. And then this is probably just a cover thing of, he's like, dance, everybody dance. And then you see them dancing in the front, and they're like, oh, we're burning our gold. And then, but then we cut to after that, and the fire is like, they're searching through the ash, like there's no more fire, and they're just looking through the ash for these gold chunks, and they find these melted flat pieces where, as previously they were like sticks. And I guess that's because they hid them in the wood, why they were shaped like sticks. But Anyway, so
And
Yeah.
they pick up a good amount and are able to run away, but then the two peasants are selfish and run back and want to get more, want to get the rest.
Get the rest.
And so they're searching through and they get the rest, but then two soldiers come upon them and like, what are you doing? And we're like, nothing. Run away.
yeah.
And so the two soldiers are like, that's suspicious, of course, and run after them. And so General Makabe, they're like, help! And he easily defeats the two soldiers and is like, carry this or die.
This part, I was like, okay, the end is pretty close, like, but it keeps being more stuff. And
They're getting really close to the border with their ally at this point.
yeah.
And so we're like, yeah, they're going to make it. But then they basically have an entire army come upon them and are surrounded. And
Yeah.
so they're captured.
On all sides this time.
Yeah, on all
So,
sides. So there's no getting away. I wrote in here, the two idiots. The two idiots
Yes.
get separated. And they're like, okay, well, maybe we can say that we're turning them in and sell them and get money for it. Like, still.
And then that doesn't end up working out because they capture everybody and take them to the fortress. So that this is like the second act down point where everything's at its worst. And is this where we see them in jail? And they're like, oh, I still want to, if we go, or no, what was it? Let's still be friends in heaven.
Oh, with the two peasants? That's not until later.
Oh, is it not? Okay. Yeah.
But the peasant girl, the princess, and Makabe are in prison at this point.
And as they were, it seems like most of the plot runs around this gold, and it's like, okay, like, I don't know, it's not much of a motivation, but as soon as like the peasant girl starts like running towards the people and he like saves her and starts running off, I'm like, oh, okay, this is engaging. Like, I don't know, maybe they could have got more fuel out of that. Like had the slave girl earlier, and then she like that's her whole thing of like she thinks she's lower class, so she's trying to sacrifice herself for the princess and for them. And that was a big aspect that I didn't pick up on while I was watching it. Afterwards, like it's a big class system thing of like she takes compassion on this lower class girl that
While they're in the prison, we kind of get to see that a little bit from the princess. And she's like, even if we don't escape this, like, I'm grateful for this experience because I saw the world through different eyes. I was able to experience the fire festival and what is the life of a man, you know. And
okay, yeah, I know where we are now.
but
yeah.
also like I'm no better than this other girl over here.
Yeah, that lands much better now because I didn't pick up on what she was talking about. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, you went down a road with some sticks. Like, I didn't pick up on the whole slave girl and that stuff dynamic to it, but that does make a lot of sense. And then, then a guy comes in that they're not sure who it is, some high official, and there's this great shot of him just in the shadows, and you just see the glint in his eyes, and then he steps out of the shadows, and it's the guy that he beat in the battle, but he's got a big scar right down his nose and down the middle of his face
That he didn't have before.
Yeah, and
he hates Makabe for that at this point.
Yeah, because he abandoned him to his men, basically, is the way he sees it. Like he left him as a cow or as a loser, basically.
He would have rather that he had killed him in battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then then it's the next day, and they've got the horses lined up, and they show.
But you can't skip the next part before that.
Yeah.
While they're still having the conversation, his name is Hyoe. General Hyoe. He's full of this animosity toward General Makabe, and the princess is like, what, you would rather have him kill you? It is not he who is dishonorable. It was your, who you serve that was dishonorable for treating you in such a way. You fought honorably, and so did Makabe. That was no reason for you to be punished.
Yeah.
And for you to be dishonored in that way. And that, and I would never treat someone lower than me like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads on to the next part. You can go ahead.
The horses on the road. Yeah. So they've got the horses with the golds in the back, and then they're up on the horses in the front. And, so they're going to, I guess, take them back to their fortress, I guess.
To be executed.
And then there's this moment where they all look back at the open gate, like leading back to the other road, and then the general looks at them and then looks back, and then he starts walking this way, and he starts singing that song that she was singing, and it's like, okay, what? And then he starts attacking his own men, and they're like, he's gone mad. Mm-hmm. And he slaps the horses and makes them, or sends them off down the road, and I guess that was a distraction, or anyway, but this is his kind of his Han Solo moment. Mm-hmm. Of, you think he's not on board with these guys, and at first there's the feeling of, oh, he might help them, but then he tells his perspective on it, which is clearly he's not appreciative of of him leaving him there. But then he slaps these horses and they run off, and the peasants have run off at this point. They're who knows where, and because they're not gonna stick their necks out for anybody. But
he slaps the horses with the gold, and then it's the three with the general, the princess, and the peasant.
So they say, like, if you want to come with us,
their
like,
bonds free.
Yeah, he frees them, and so they run out, and the princess is like, if you want to come with us, like, follow us. And so he does, and they go off down the road, and I think at this point we switch to the perspective of the peasants again. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, why are we back with these guys? What is going on here?
They try to sell off the princess, and like, but then they realize, oh, they were already captured, and the other guys are like, just get out of here. Yeah. And they're able to cross the border, and they find the horses with the gold.
Yeah, the horses with the gold run up, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess happy ending for them too.
But then the army of the allies now find them with the horses and their gold, and like, what are you doing with these horses of gold, these peasants? Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, and they're like acting suspicious, even though they had done nothing wrong, and so they arrest them at this point, and that's when they go in. They're in jail together. Yeah.
So at this point, they're like, I want to be friends in heaven, or like, yeah, and then and at this point, I'm like, why is this movie not over yet? Like, okay, everything has been resolved. Like, why are we still following these peasants in this prison? And then we show them in the courtyard right in front of the throne room, and there's a samurai and a princess on a throne, and the other general, and they've got their heads down, so they're not recognizing who these guys are. And him in his armor, he looks a lot different. And she's like, take off your armor, they don't know who you are. And it's like, oh, fine. And he takes off his helmet, and so it's our general guy, and they're like, we can't let you guys have the rest of the gold because it's gonna fund our stuff, but we will give you this. And they give them like one piece of gold. Mm-hmm. And so this is another parallel of a throne room with a princess giving a reward to someone. So, and then, they walk off and we cut to credits.
And the guy that helped rescue them was also on her right hand.
Yeah.
So you had both generals
both
there.
generals, yeah. From both sides. Okay. Yeah, so do we have anything more about Hidden Fortress before
No,
we
I
move on to
think you
Star
nailed
Wars?
it.
Yes. I have lots of thoughts.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, go for it.
Well, do they fit more in Criss Cross or
No.
Oh, okay.
No, they're just thoughts
Yeah.
about the movie in general.
Yeah, sure.
I find it's a very interesting movie, especially if you think about the timing. In 1959, they are still very raw at this point from World War II. And if you the Japanese culture is a very proud culture, and the culture at that time, they were trying to shed a very, I guess, toxic culture trait at that time. And so I find it interesting, this movie
So
that
like
was
the class system or what?
I think a few things, but mainly, specifically, the honor system. That yes, honor is good, but not. You don't have to die to be honorable.
Oh, gotcha.
Because
Yeah.
people were literally throwing themselves off cliffs after they
Oh,
lost the
geez.
war.
Yeah.
Lost the war because they felt it was more honorable to die for their country that way than to have lost.
Yeah.
And so they were a very proud country. And so I think it is really unique and pertinent that they hearken back to the honor days of Japan, of the samurai.
Yeah.
And so this movie, it's all about those honor days where to all Japanese people, that was the ideal, to
Yeah.
live like the samurai, right? And so they're hearkening back to the golden age while also trying to show them it is better to live than die,
Yeah.
you know.
And it's interesting. I heard that Akira Kurosawa was not appreciated by Japan, but like he's more appreciated at festivals over in the U.S. than he was then, and that's only when they started watching him and being like, oh, maybe there is something to this guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And you also have this, like, at the time also, Japanese were very harsh leaders. They were very, very cruel. And so I think they were also trying to reverse that psychology of saying, like, no, it is good to have benevolent leaders. It is good to
Yeah.
be a benevolent leader. And it is good to choose to serve a benevolent leader instead of dying for a cruel leader.
yeah,
Because they were coming from a very cruel system
yeah,
that they were living by at that time. And so trying to shift the perspective of the
Yeah.
culture. Another thing that I found interesting was the juxtaposition of the two lowest of low peasants. There was no honor in them
yeah,
whatsoever. And so any Japanese person would say that, like, no peasant should even act like that. There's no
Yeah.
honor. And so it's the juxtaposition of the lowest of low with the highest of high, the samurai, Makabe, and showing the two standards of honor and being like, okay, this is not honorable. This is honorable. He did not die even though they lost in the conflict. He did not kill himself because they lost in the conflict, because in essence they were still on the losing side.
yeah,
Her clan was taken over. She and her general are basically the only surviving ones, you know.
Yeah.
They have to rebuild their clan. But instead of just dying off, they lived for another day.
yeah.
So I thought that was
That's-
interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like I that's the big thing that I miss with watching Akira Kurosawa movies. I'd say Japanese movies, but that's the only movies that I've seen that are Japanese. But because that cultural context is like I'm basically like those peasants watching this movie. I don't know what the crap is going on, but anyway, that's really cool though.
But that honor suicides is like, it was still a thing for a long time.
Yeah.
My parents both actually lived in Japan when they were young as well. They served missions for our church. And during their time, that would have been the middle 70s, 1974. It was still very common for you have a child who didn't get into the college that his family wanted him to, commit an honor
geez.
suicide.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, it was big. You didn't get the raise or the promotion in your job that you worked for and did everything for your family for. You commit an honor suicide.
Wow.
It's better for your family for you to die than to live with that disgrace. And so, fortunately, when I lived in Japan, it's not as prevalent, but it is very much better than it was. But
yeah. And do you know if this movie had any impact to change that culture?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. Sorry.
But it does show that, like, the power of film, though, like, regardless of if that changed it or not,
Yeah.
like, to put out a good message like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using media to help in positive ways. So.
Cool. So, that's our review and overview of Hidden Fortress. Now we will go into our review of Star Wars. Okay, so there's that opening music that comes on, and
Everybody knows.
it still excites me. Like, it's,
When I saw Star Wars for the first time, my dad, my brother, and I went, and I didn't know anything about it. I'm like, oh, okay. And go in there, and the only place we could sit was like in the very front row. And so when everything starts coming at you, you know, it's like,
yeah.
it was amazing.
It's fun.
It's so
Yeah.
amazing.
Did you see it in theaters?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I was a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, the only time I've seen it in theaters is when they had the re-releases for the special editions. So. And we only watched Return of the Jedi. So, and this is going to be, or it is released today, is May 4th. So, yeah.
There you go. May the 4th be
May the
with
4th
you.
Yes.
be with us. And so in the opening title, it says a hidden base. I'm like, it's a hidden
how
fortress.
cool. Yeah.
And so watching this was like, man, I haven't watched Star Wars in a long time. But then we open on like the ship going overhead and the small ship going overhead and then the big ship chasing it. And we've got this battle going on. And it's basically the same as Hidden Fortress, except we actually see the battle. And then we see inside the ship after it's captured by the big ship. I mean, you guys have seen Star Wars, right? We see the droids, and here we have our two peasants, and we actually see this battle going on, and they're in the middle of it. So this opens basically a few minutes before Hidden Fortress opens, chronologically, with the way that movie opens. And I wonder if that's a budget thing, or I don't know, but it is a pretty clever storytelling device for Hidden Fortress. If you don't even see the battle, you just hear the aftermath of it and them talking about it, and it creates the kind of disorienting feel that they have. And yeah, so they start out squabbling from the beginning, just like our two Hidden Fortress peasants. But there's a much more prominent villain in this one from the very beginning. We have Darth Vader walk in, and he starts interrogating people and the whole deal. And we see Princess Leia in the hallway, or in the side kind of equipment area. The stormtroopers come in, and she's got the gun, so we've got the armed princess, similar to Hidden Fortress, even though she's just got a stick. But she can do a lot with that stick, though.
Yeah.
But
especially against two bumbling idiots.
yes. And then Darth Vader says she's our only link to finding her secret base. And we're 9 minutes in now, and now we're at the opening of Hidden Fortress. They're on this desert planet and wandering through the desert, and just these two arguing droids. And but in this case, we've got a courageous one of the bunch, which is the smaller one, R2-D2, and he's like, "Fine, go that way. I'm not going on any more of your adventures." And then
the fun thing about C-3PO and R2-D2 is their conversations are always one-sided for the audience.
Yeah.
Right.
We only hear C-3PO's version of it.
Yeah. So you kind of have to fill in R2's thing. I mean, they can get the emotion of it with the beeps, but that's basically it.
Yeah.
But
which adds a little bit of opportunity for creativity in the audience's mind.
yeah.
You hear the sarcasm, and you can just laugh at it, even though you don't know exactly what they say.
C-3PO's a dumbo. Fine, you walk that way. Yeah. So then they separate, and this is very similar to Hidden Fortress. They separate and they come back together again, and so R2-D2 goes, or C-3PO goes off and is in the desert, and there's this really cool shot of, I didn't notice this before. Of course, I noticed the thing in the shot, but there's a giant skeleton in the thing.
It's like a sandworm or something.
Yeah, it's actually a crate dragon.
Okay.
Actually, but it shows this big dead creature right at the point when you're supposed to be feeling, oh, like he has gone the wrong way.
Yeah.
And then we go back to R2-D2, and he's going down this canyon, and he's hearing this commotion, and then the thing comes up, and he shoots him, and the Jawas take him off, and this has that real other culture type feel to it that it's kind of what's made Star Wars work, I think, that we'll see further in the cantina as well. But simultaneously, they're taking him away as C-3PO is seeing this thing off in the distance, and he's like, "I'm saved!" Yeah. And it turns out they're in the same sandcrawler, and so they're reunited, similar to Hidden Fortress. And
they're both captured by undesirables to be reunited, at least.
And then this is where we get to the end of the first sequence, the first 15 minutes, which is the first half of Act 1. And this has introduced the world to us, and now we get introduced to our main character, Luke Skywalker. And this is a character that doesn't exist in Hidden Fortress. And I don't know, I think it tightens up the structure having Luke in it, because I don't know, we're not following these two bumbling idiots the entire time. Not that R2-D2 is an idiot, but anyway.
We're not following Obi-Wan and Princess Leia are more structures of the story than they are characters, just like the general and the princess are more structures. And so we have this other character that can be more mobile to kind of go in between pictures and show us other things. And you've got an audience surrogate, whereas in Hidden Fortress, especially if you don't know any Japanese context, like I don't know what's going on. But with having Luke in the picture, we've got a character that it's like, okay, he doesn't know either. He's
he's innocent in this thing, and he doesn't know what's going on. And he's also an audience surrogate of, there's a character to have an arc. And I guess there is a bit of an arc with the peasants and like at the end,
Well, at the end
the one gives up the gold to the other guy.
Right,
but I don't know. It's just
Little
one
tiny
scene.
arc.
So,
And as far as Luke goes, I don't know. You may hate me for saying this, but I don't feel like in this first movie that there's a lot of character arc for Luke. He's more of being the like you said, the audience surrogate of like finding out what's going on, of like if things happen to him throughout the movie, but it's more of him just like going along for the ride almost.
yeah.
You know.
And it's I'll point out what I think his arc is when we get further along, but anyway, but these two peasant characters, C-3PO and R2-D2, have introduced us to our real hero, and I feel structure wise that's much stronger, because it's like, I don't know, Hidden Fortress is just, there's a lot of great stuff happening in it, but just following these two bumbling idiots the entire way is like, okay, this is just drawing all the focus from what we should be caring about. And
especially like if they were a little bit actually more like C-3PO and R2-D2, where they had a little bit of like R2-D2
different personalities, or
like more purpose.
yeah,
Like all they wanted was gold, but R2-D2, he actually wanted to perpetuate the mission. He was on a mission.
He's driven. Nothing's gonna dissuade him.
C-3PO, he's along for the ride. He has no
Right,
idea
right.
what's going on.
Yeah.
But R2-D2, he had a mission to deliver those plans
Yeah.
from Leia. And so
that adds more structure if it's got that focus to it. But and that's the thing about influences. Like, you take the things that work, leave the things on the table that don't necessarily work. Luke is such a whiner. I wrote that down. I was going to the Tashi station to pick up some power converters. And then his uncle's like, you can hang out with your friends later. And it's like, is his friends power converters? What? There's some deleted scenes where he hangs out with his friends at the space gas station.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're not very good. So they cut them out. But
Well, I mean, how responsible were you in your teenage, like, as a teenager? And here he is. He's been working his butt off for his uncle for years on end. His friends are off living their life.
Just his tone about it is like, I was going to the Tashi station. It's like, oh, shut up, Luke. My dad really does not like Luke's whininess. But
I feel like he's whinier in the second movie. I guess
Probably.
the fifth movie, but because I haven't seen it in a while, and I was like, I'm gonna look at Luke and like, how bad is it really? And it really isn't that bad, at least in this movie.
yeah, it's not too bad. Like the first introduction to him though, like, is the most whiny. Like his first couple lines are like, okay, like, but yeah, he is better later on. But anyway, so then we have the Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi. The hologram comes from R2-D2, and then this is the inciting incident of the call to action, as they'd call it, and Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. Which is also, if that were a movie that we could compare it to, it would be something that we could pair with Star Wars, because Hero's Journey is what Star Wars is structured off of.
R2-D2 runs away.
Yeah, R2-D2 runs away. But before that, there's an interesting moment where 3PO says, I'm not very good at telling stories. And I've noticed there's a little bit of an arc for him in this trilogy of, by Return of the Jedi, he's telling the whole story of the rebellion and the Empire to the Ewoks.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And he's got even sound effects and stuff. And it's like, you've got full-on Disney audiobook here, C-3PO. Either you were lying to us or you've gotten better at storytelling.
Well, I think that's the thing with droids, right? They can learn.
Yeah.
Like, not like book learning, but they can adapt and become better at things.
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, they're basically people.
Yep.
So the next day, after he's found out R2-D2's run off, he mentions Obi-Wan over the breakfast table to Owen and Brew, and there's a little look between them that I didn't notice before of like, the kid has found out about something, and it's like, anyway. But then, I think we're mixing
And he's
things
like-
up. Anyway, there's the double sunset moment that is magical. The John Williams score. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, it was just over the meal, the same meal. Where he's talking about Obi-Wan, and he's like, he knew your father, he knew my father. He's like, but that old, what does he call him?
Old hermit or
No, crazy old wizard.
yeah.
Like he's just a crazy old wizard. Like trying to brush him off. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't want him to go anywhere
And he's
near
like,
anything like that.
Focus on the harvest. Like, that's the important thing now is the harvest. And like, Uncle Owen is a very practical man, like down to earth. Like, don't be thinking about all this. Anyway,
His aunt,
off in the universe and stuff. But,
his aunt still has a little bit of understanding of the dreamer, and especially Luke's roots. That
yeah.
he's gonna be a little bit more of a dreamer.
Yeah, and there's the perfect visual storytelling of the binary sunsets and them staring off into it, and the Force theme plays over it. And,
Right after dinner, yeah.
yeah, and I think that's when C-3PO comes in and is like, "Hey, he ran off." And it's like, "What?" And then, but then the next morning they go after him, and but before that though, we cut to the Death Star, and we see them talking about the power of it and all that for the first time. So we've got the big stakes of it's got the power to blow up planets, and there's a line from Darth Vader where he's like, the power to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force. And that's a really interesting setup for Luke using the Force at the end of the movie. So then we discover Obi-Wan, or he comes into the picture, and I think it's right at minute 30, and which is really when Act 2 should be starting, but it's got kind of a long Act 1. It starts at about 40 minutes, Act 2. Obi-Wan talks about the Force and stuff, and I'm not sure what order this goes in. They listen to her message first, and then he tells them about the Force, and he's like, "You should go with me to Alderaan and learn about the Force." And he's like, "That's the call to action." And he refuses it, and he's like, now he takes his uncle's side, and he's like, "Well, but I need to stay with my uncle for one more season." And then that's very quickly cut off. They discover the Jawas are killed, and then he's like, if they found the droids, like, and there's this really cool blink and you'll miss it moment where he's like, why would they slaughter Jawas? And then it cuts to a shot of the droids just looking around like this, and it's like, oh, the droids. And he's like, if they found the droids, then they would have tracked them to home, and then he goes off, and then we have that score, that really haunting score of the, I think it's the main Star Wars theme, but it's played in a haunting way. And he finds his aunt and uncle all
Charred.
and he comes back and he's like, I've got nothing left. Like, the ground has been burned beneath his feet, and now he's got nowhere left to go. And that's perfect structure. Like, he's thrust into Act 2, and he has to go on the mission. And then we cut to a torture scene of the princess that's very brief. And then they go to Mos Eisley. And then the cantina is really interesting. I don't know if I'd call it world building, but it's at the very least texture. Like, just all these different aliens and stuff. Like, it makes you question like, oh, what are all these different things about? And it kind of has that feeling of Star Wars, that there could be a million different stories going on next to this story. But and then Obi-Wan, or the two guys next to the bar, Buttface and apparently Dr. Man, start picking on Luke, and then Obi-Wan comes in and chops off Dr. Man's arm. And
I don't like you.
yeah. And he's like, hey, I found the thing over here. Let's go do the thing. And they talk to Han Solo. And there's a lot of deal making. And then finally I'm just going to skip forward. They get on the Millennium Falcon and then they go. And the editing for this part, when the stormtroopers come in and they're running to get on the Millennium Falcon, is so quick. Like, there's a shot of Chewie in the cockpit as Han is running up the steps that it's literally like, I don't know, like 12 frames, but it works. It like gives it this energy, and you're like, okay, yeah, let's go. And here we are going into Act 2.
The one setup though that happens before that is important for Han's character, is just the setup of
money,
he's about the money, and he's in a lot of debt.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't pay up, then he's going to have a bounty on his head.
Then the pace really picks up from here, of where it's making up for the very long Act 1, and very quickly Alderaan is blown up, and we have that scene with the princess and Darth Vader and Tarkin, and he's interrogating her for the location of the secret base, the hidden fortress, as you will, if you will. But and then they blow up Alderaan, and that, as you pointed out, that has the same effect in the story as the destroying of the hidden fortress. All of that happens much earlier in Hidden Fortress. And that's almost the lead into Act 2 for Hidden Fortress. But anyway, but that's a perfect midpoint, because Obi-Wan reacts to it. Then we have a little bit of a training montage in the Force, and then once they arrive to the place where Alderaan is supposed to be, it's just an asteroid field, and they're like, where is it? It's like, it's nowhere. It's been blown to bits. And then this is our midpoint, which is a perfect midpoint, where they get sucked into the Death Star. And so there's a change of pace, a change of place, and they've upped the stakes. So, which is,
they are captured,
the things that a good midpoint should do. So we've got a refresh on it, and it's like, okay, now we've got this new adventure that we've got to do. And they find out the princess is there, and so that becomes the mission to go find the princess. I thought it was interesting to let the Wookiee win part showed C-3PO being the coward, being the cowardly peasant. And then this part is interesting too, of they do a little thing that's kind of a clever thing first, of the stormtroopers come aboard, they trick the stormtroopers aboard by yelling out to them after the guys come in, and then the stormtroopers come up, and then you hear two blasts, and then anyway, then it cuts to a little bit later, and the guy is saying from the control room, TK-421, why are you at your post? And I'm such a nerd for remembering the exact number, but anyway, so then Luke comes out, and he's like, I got no communicator, and he's like, you've got a bad communicator, and he goes to the door, and then him and Chewie are at the door, and they smack him, and then they come in, and then Luke very quickly comes in, and we've got a really interesting moment here where it's like the peasants, where they're arguing back and forth, and then you've got the general of Obi-Wan who's got a plan going, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go off and do my thing, and they keep arguing. So I thought that was interesting. But they're kind of filling those bickering peasant shoes, whereas C-3PO and R2-D2 were there before. But then Luke wants to save the princess, And of course, he's the eager, we got to do the thing guy, and Han is, I'm just here for the money.
And then
guy.
Luke says that
Save
you're
my
going to get
own
a lot of
bacon.
money if you help
Yeah,
save the princess, and that
And
gets
so
him on
that's
board.
very similar to
Yeah.
the general in Hidden Fortress saying, "Oh, there's gold.
Yeah.
Come with us for the gold." But he doesn't even tell them the plan for that part. They just know, "Oh, we're going to get gold."
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting about the characters and kind of the structure of Star Wars is they're more united in purpose than, even though Han is in it for the money and himself type thing, he's still doing the same thing as these other guys. Whereas
Yeah.
you got kind of two tugging things with Hidden Fortress, where there's the plan, and then there's these peasants that are just doing whatever the crap they.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing, but
They're not very good at following a plan.
yeah, no, they don't even know the plan. So, but then we get to the detainment facility where they do the trick with putting Chewbacca in the cuffs,
shackles.
shackles, and then they go up the elevator to the prison, and then
And Chewie scares off the little.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they shoot all the cameras, and I love the Han talking to the guys through the intercom afterwards of like, "We're all fine here now. How are you?" And then he's like, there's that little look where he's like, "I'm such an idiot." and then he just finally blasts the
Boring
intercom.
conversation anyway.
Yeah. He's like, "Look, we're gonna have company," and then so there we've got a suspense element of, we know these guys are gonna be coming up at a certain point. They've got a limited amount of time for them to get the princess and get out. And then they it's great structure of like, they don't get out. Like the stormtroopers get in before they, and a whole bunch of them before they can get down the hallway. And so they're like, "Oh crap, we're trapped. The only way out is down this tube," where they're like, "Oh yay, we're out." And then out of the frying pan into the fire. They're in the garbage masher. And yeah, my favorite line from the garbage masher scene is the, "Oh, listen to them, they're dying, R2.
Yes.
Curse my metal body, I wasn't fast enough." Which shows that even C-3PO cares.
Yeah.
And I think this is more of a George Lucas thing
Yeah.
than it is I mean, I don't know who wrote Akira Kurosawa's scripts, but like even his characters that don't care. Like, and his MacGuffins, like the things they're supposed to be after, like in Hitchcock movies, they're things you're not supposed to care about. Like, it's just there to make the plot work. We're after the blah, 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 the plans, the whatever. But he very intentionally puts the plans in R2-D2, and he makes
Our MacGuffins are like people.
Yeah,
Leia.
Leia, R2-D2, things that or people that you care about, and you want to, and so there's this eagerness to his writing that very much comes across in Luke, but also the other characters that supposedly don't care, and C-3PO is one of those, and then we have Obi-Wan in the fight in the hallway, and then we this is a very good, like, the structure of Star Wars is just spot on. Like, this is the end of Act 2 down point where he dies in battle with Darth Vader, and then very quickly we learn that there's a homing beacon on their ship, so even though they got away, it's just a matter of time before the Empire catches up with them. And
One thing that I find that I feel like they could have touched on a little bit more is the fact that Luke now has nobody. He's lost his aunt, his uncle, and now the only mentor he really ever had. He literally has no mentor or father figure or anything. And he's had those people taken away from him in the space of like 2 days.
the space.
Haha.
Yeah,
And-
like he's completely adrift. Like he's got literally no one.
But
Yeah.
he, at the same time, though, he has Obi-Wan saying, I'm still with you. In
Yeah,
the Force
I noticed
and
there's
that.
4 times that Obi-Wan speaks to him after he
Yeah.
dies,
Yeah.
which is a great setup for what, like, it would have felt like it was out of nowhere had he just been like, turn off your targeting computer, Luke.
Yeah,
It's
use
like,
the
whoa,
Force.
what?
Yeah,
Where's this
yeah.
coming from?
Yeah.
But anyway. But then, so then Han leaves with his money, and Luke tries to convince him to stay, and he doesn't. And so that's very similar to the general, we think he's gonna maybe help, but turns out he's got a grudge against Makabe. So, and then we have the briefing for the Death Star battle, and then we get into the Death Star battle itself. And that's just, if you want a master class for raising the tension and the stakes, like it just keeps trimming it down, and it's all the way down to where Luke was the only one left.
Yeah.
And then Han comes in and saves the day.
And that is after they are
Yeah.
in range. So throughout this whole thing, they're going, okay, 30 minutes until the moon can be destroyed. 15 minutes. Okay, the enemy fighters pop up.
Right.
Okay, the first approach is shot down. Okay, we're 3 minutes away. We haven't even done it yet. We barely even tried to get in to shoot it and wasn't able to even try shooting it. Second approach misses. 1 minute.
And even on the successful run, R2-D2 is blown up, and he's our emotional anchor that we've had from the beginning.
So we have 1 minute. Luke goes in, and the tiny spark of, Luke actually has his best friend here, Biggs. So he isn't all alone in the world. And then Biggs dies.
Yeah.
And then he turns off his aid, and then the moon is in range and they can shoot, and Luke is all alone.
Yeah.
And that's when Han shows up. And then R2's down.
And then we're missing a big point of Obi-Wan says, turn off your targeting computer, Luke. Trust the Force. And then he's like, no. But then he eventually does it and uses the Force and makes the shot. And then he's like, great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million. And then the Force will be with you always. Dang. I tried not to get choked up. It's excellent storytelling. It's
really
just
is.
amazing. Anyway, and then...
But I also love at this point when R2 gets blown up, you see C-3PO so concerned. You can take all of my spare... You can take any of my parts.
That's what I'm talking about. Even C-3PO.
Because so far C-3PO has just found R2-D2 like... You're gonna have to repay me for this, or I'm not gonna let you forget this, or their C-3PO is always annoyed with R2-D2.
You're just the worst, R2-D2.
And then he's like, take all of my parts to fix him if you need to,
Yeah. And then we close the way we did with Hidden Fortress in a throne room, receiving a reward from a princess. But Chewie doesn't get a reward.
I know. He didn't even get one of those medals around his neck.
My mom was like, did FEMA, or not FEMA, that's the wrong one. What is the animal rights?
Oh,
I don't know.
I know
Anyway.
the one you mean.
He's not even an animal. He's a sentient being.
Yeah, that's true. He's got fur. Yeah, anyway. Okay. So, you have anything more on just Star Wars?
The last time I watched it, that he did not get
Yeah.
anything. I felt
There's a
kinda bad
whole
about that.
justice for Chewie thing on the
there you
internet
go.
that's like,
Okay,
why
that's
didn't he
good.
get a medal?
Yeah.
In fact, the end of episode 9, which doesn't make any sense because there's no setup for it in the movie itself. Chewie gets a medal.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Very belated. But,
Yeah.
It's true. He would probably just be like, "What's this? What is this for?" It's like, oh, the thing way back then. Okay, thank you.
I will use it as a weapon.
Anyway, but okay, yeah. So that's our review of Star Wars, and now we go crisscross.
Every once in a while, two films will share a bond to transcend time, space, and even genre. These similarities go down to their DNA. So let's dissect and deconstruct, compare and contrast. It's time to go crisscross.
Crisscross.
Okay, so the first parallel, which I think we all, I mean, did everybody notice that when you were watching Hidden Fortress, the peasants and
Yes.
Yeah.
they're R2D2
But, okay.
and C3PO.
My question to myself, and I don't
Yeah.
know how anybody else feels about it, is if someone hadn't told me that Star Wars took some of its ideas or structure or whatever from Hidden Fortress, and I just went out and just watched Hidden Fortress, and I had watched Star Wars, right? So everything being the same, except I hadn't been told
Yeah.
that there was anything between the two. Would I have known it? I don't know. You know, I don't know if I would have been sitting there watching Hidden Fortress
Yeah.
going, oh my gosh, that's like Star Wars, you know?
Which is a good thing. Like, it's not exact. Like,
No.
there's certain articles online that try to point out, oh, it's exactly the same thing. And it's like, well, no, it's not.
No.
Like,
I mean, they're
it's-
both works of art on their
Yeah.
own as well,
Yeah.
you know? So whether anything influences anything or not, it's still
Yeah.
interesting
And
to look at both of them in their own right.
Star Wars takes its DNA from a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like, and that's influence-wise, that's a really good method to take of like, you take from just one thing, that's copyright infringement.
Yeah, exactly.
But you take from a bunch of different things and you make a melting pot of stuff.
Well,
like,
and make its
it's-
own
yeah.
new world then out of it too. It's not
Yeah.
just like making a stew, like putting everything together and it tastes good or whatever. It's like all these ingredients on their own, they're good ingredients, but when you actually put them all together, you have like an amazing thing comes
Yeah.
out of it. You
And
know, it all works together.
And I think he did it the right way of like, I might be burned at the stake for saying this to maybe some people, but some cinephiles, but I think Star Wars is a better movie than Hidden Fortress.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it took
Yes,
the
I
good
agree.
things from Hidden Fortress,
No,
and
wait,
it took good
I'm
things
sorry.
from other places. But
Are there people that think Hidden Fortress is
I
a
don't
better
know.
movie?
They probably are
Okay.
people that I don't know.
For one thing, I feel like a lot had the whole filmmaking art itself had grown from
Really evolved.
It had really
Yeah.
evolved since
Yeah.
1959 to 1977 already.
Yeah.
And you can see that in how Star Wars is filmed. Not only is the storyline more intricate, but the way that they film it is more, I guess, cinematic, as we would put it.
Yeah.
Where in the old days, you know, we have these characters, we follow these characters. And, but by the time Star Wars came out, they had learned to weave things in, to
Yeah.
draw in the audience, so that we're jumping back from one scene
so
to
you're
another.
saying you don't necessarily have to follow the dumb peasants the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like in Star Wars, they had learned that we jump from these characters to these characters to these characters. The amount of time that they were switching back and forth between Luke and Leia and Vader and back to Luke, and it was almost me actually trying to take notes on it. I was like, okay, Vader, now back to Luke, now Vader, now Luke, now Leia, now you know, like it was back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Whereas you don't notice that when you're watching, because it's like layers of a cake. It goes on top of each other. Whereas in Hidden Fortress, it was much more simple way of filming in the 50s and earlier.
Yeah.
It was
It could have used some cutting to the bad guys in that one.
Yeah,
Like,
you could
that's-
have. But they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't think about that in those earlier films.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the evolution. I'm sure if we went even back further, we would see it from the 30s up to the 50s,
Mm-hmm.
and now we see from the 50s to the 70s that evolution of filmmaking
Yeah.
that occurred.
One thing that I thought was pretty interesting at the beginning, or maybe it was the trailer, I don't know, to the Hidden Fortress is it was saying on the screen how they'd gotten together all the very best actors in Japan to make this epic film and everything like that, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. And then you're like, oh, really? But
Yeah.
it's just because the whole thing has evolved so much.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true.
I mean, there was good acting. It was good, but it wasn't what we've come to expect from our more advanced.
I mean, 50s acting, like even in the U.S., was not. I mean, before like Marlon Brando and the whole, I guess more
like the new
method
school or
stuff.
whatever.
I don't mean like method, but like
yeah. No, I know what you
like
mean.
trying to live the character from the inside. Like it was very just say the lines and.
Right.
I mean, even in the early sound era, it was just say the lines as clearly as possible because we need it good for sound.
Yeah.
So that's why people talk weird in older movies. But
I do think a barrier for us viewing it in the U.S. is our cultural difference, so that we don't understand the micro expressions and things like that they have in Japan. I felt like their acting was great, and I can see some of those
American and
things.
Japanese emotions are definitely very
They're
different.
very different. So that's one thing. But another thing also that I think is a barrier for us is language. We have to be following half the movie through
we're
subtitles.
looking
Yes.
at the bottom of the screen.
Exactly,
most
by
of the movie.
looking at the words instead of looking at their acting.
I like Mifune, like the Tofuro Mifune, because he's, I don't know, I guess this is a good point to mention that I like Yojimbo much better structure-wise and story-wise than I like Hidden Fortress. And that one is basically classic Western of the wandering samurai, comes across a problem in this town, and he's the only one that can clean it up, and so he cleans it up, and then immediately the last shot is he's walking off out of town. So, but it's got much better structure than this one. This one's much more meandering, and you're not really sure. Well, I guess they do set up that they're trying to get across the border, but it's like we keep following these stupid peasants that all they care about is the gold, and it's like the gold doesn't matter. Like it's just, I don't know.
Well,
But-
so after I
yeah.
had watched The Hidden Fortress, then I watched Seven Samurai, because I know that's a classic, you know,
Yeah.
from the director. And I thought, okay, so, because I'll have to say, and I'm sorry, but I was underimpressed with Hidden Fortress. So, but then I thought, okay, this other movie, this great movie, great director, everything. And I watched it, and the acting in there was really superb. I mean, a long movie, but I thought he really, I could see why he gets such acclaim for that film.
Yeah.
You know? So,
And like most of Akira Kurosawa's acclaim is for his visuals. Like I don't know if you noticed, but like it's kind of something you have to point out. Like he's got a lot of movement in the background and the foreground. So like a lot of rain and like wind and like dust, and so you have that feel to his wide shots that they have this space to them. It's almost comic bookish, and then very silhouetted figures, and like there's that shot of him coming into the cave to talk to the princess, and he's completely silhouetted with the bright light outside, and his visuals are just amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, then I'm just going to go through the rest of this list. These are the surface parallels. Old general helping a young princess equals Obi-Wan and Leia. feisty princess who they're trying to save. And then there's no Luke. That's probably the biggest difference between the two of these. Which is like, in fact, did I already mention this? George Lucas was going to do it very much more similar to Hidden Fortress, where it was just Obi-Wan and just Obi-Wan and Leia, and they were venturing. And but then I don't know how he got the idea for the character of Luke, but I think it strengthens the structure of it.
Well, and then I have to wonder too, else with Star Wars is like, so for that to be Episode 4, which was the first one, then they had to have known somebody at some point in screenwriting, okay, so actually Luke and Leia are brother and sister, and then, all this and that, like, so then they're putting all that together, right? So, but at what point did they start
George
doing
Lucas
that?
didn't even know that stuff. He
know
made
that.
it up as he went
Not
along.
until, because at the
But so
time
that
it
wouldn't
never
have been
said
why he put
Episode
Luke
4. It never said Episode 4 when it was first released.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it
it's
didn't.
called The New Hope, but it was a certain episode.
It wasn't even called A New Hope. It was just called Star Wars.
No, it was called A New
Really?
Hope. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because like when the thing starts scrolling, it says A New Hope, and I
You
They
might
put
be
in-
rewriting your memory
'Cause they
because
put
I
in-
think it was just Star Wars when they first
First
released
well, it
came
was
it.
out.
Star Wars. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't Star Wars Episode 4. That
Yeah.
was not how it was promoted.
Yeah.
But when you're in the theater and watching it,
Does it say A New Hope?
I think it says A New Hope.
Okay.
I don't know if it says Episode 4.
But when he wrote A New Hope, at least, he didn't have any plans for any other movies,
Well,
but it was a big
actually, he
hit.
did have plans, but he changed them along the way.
I see.
So
But then
there wasn't
he,
the Luke and Leia being brother and sister.
Yeah.
Okay.
There wasn't even Darth Vader being their dad.
Oh, okay.
and he even when they filmed that, nobody knew the actual line until it was released in theaters.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
The only one he told it, he didn't even tell it to the actor for Darth Vader.
He didn't
Wow.
even tell it to the actor for Luke.
Yeah.
Wow.
He only told it to the voice actor who said, "I am your father."
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's the way you would have to do it today because, like, plot leaks and stuff
Yeah.
Yes.
nowadays. But anyway, so motivated by gold, the two peasants, and then Han is motivated by money. And then they both end up in a throne room at the end getting an award from a princess. So it, on a surface level, this is... Okay, I'm going to go off on a tangent for just a bit. A lot of people compare A New Hope to Force Awakens, like saying it's exactly the same movie. It's like, no, it is not the same movie. They have a lot of the same plot points, but they're rearranged and serve a different purpose in the script. Like, I can't think of examples off the top of my head, but there are a lot of the same. It's basically the way that George Lucas took from different things of like and of course Star Wars, the original one, is the biggest influence for Force Awakens, but it's like taking from Hidden Fortress, and there's articles that might make you want to believe like, oh, they're exactly the same movie. They're not the same movie. They're very different. But like, I don't know. That's my little tangent on that. But I don't know. People just see the surface elements of like, oh, there's a princess, there's a general, there's blah 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 blah, and it's how you combine the elements and what you choose to leave out, what you choose to take in. And there's a lot of other elements to Star Wars as well that just are not in Hidden Fortress. But anyway, so that's my tangent on Force Awakens. But
So we don't have Luke, and I don't think we have Han in Force Awakens either.
no,
So those are two extra characters that are brought in.
even though ironically you have Han actually present in Force Awakens. But
Is that when
are
he's
you-
in
are you-
that block of...
I'm talking about Hidden Fortress and
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, no
and
Han.
A New Hope.
Even though I was thinking that because the character Mifune usually plays would be more similar to Han than it would to anything else. But He's definitely an Obi-Wan stand-in. But, yeah. And it's interesting. I saw an article that pointed out that Episode 1 is actually closer to Hidden Fortress than Star Wars actually is, because you've got the princess there the whole time, and you've got the Jedi there along the way, and she disguises herself at a certain point to be lower class.
Yeah.
And they're on a venture to get money to be able to do the thing that they need to do. And so it's much more structurally similar to Hidden Fortress than Star Wars actually is.
Yeah.
I've talked a lot about structure, but I think structurally wise, to sum it up, I think Hidden Fortress is a much looser structure. And I mean, because they do have it, but they've got these peasants drawing focus from it the entire time, where it's like they don't even have much reason to be there, which I think
it's a very simple it's much more simple storyline, and so they're able to drift more from it, I think, because it's really just, okay, we got to get the princess into enemy territory, into the Allies' territory. That's really all it is. Whereas, and they lay that out very clearly in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so you can follow that a lot more loosely and still have your goal in mind. Whereas in Star Wars, we've got a lot more moving elements. You have to really focus in on what's important to be able to keep track of them all.
But I think definitely from the benefit of time and development of storytelling, Star Wars has much tighter structure. It's like all the beats it hits them, it hits it like right on. You look at right where they're sucked into the Death Star, it's right smack dab in the middle. That's the midpoint.
Well, they're both exactly 2 hours long, and Star Wars fits a lot more into it than the Hidden Fortress fits into theirs. And so it has to be a lot tighter to be able to fit in all that stuff in the same amount of time.
True.
Okay, so we'll start with Hidden Fortress. Anna, what is your rating?
I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay. Any explanation or?
Sure. I mean, I felt like it was still a very solid film. It was engaging. It was good acting. A simple storyline, but I still feel like it was well presented, and like you said, visually appealing. So I felt like overall, I very much enjoyed it.
Cool.
And so I would give it a 4.
Okay, Sarah.
I'm going to say a 3, just because I don't think it's a movie that I would probably feel drawn to watch again and again. I'm glad that I saw it. I think there are some very good things in it. It just didn't grab me like a 5 would.
Okay. I was thinking kind of 4, but I think I'm going to have to join the 3 train for that reason. If you cut out the peasants and made the story more about just the general and the princess, I think that would be a much stronger story. But yeah, I'm glad. Same thing. I'm glad I watched it, and knowing the cultural background to it really adds some depth to it. And I'll take that back. I do want to rewatch it at least once, because I want to see it having the context of knowing the social class stuff and the stuff you talked about Japanese culture and honor suicide and things.
That's something that I didn't think about as much too. So it is good to have that insight.
Yeah,
I do know that from World War II and everything, that there was a lot of honor at stake.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Okay, so Star Wars, Anna.
4.5.
Okay, that's fair. Why 0.5?
I am stingy with my 5s.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's definitely a very good movie. Well done. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I would say it was revolutionary
Yeah.
for its time, and it's very solid in its storytelling and all of that, and so it is a movie that will last generations because of that. So, yeah.
Cool. Tara?
5.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And I think also because of, like, when I first saw it, I was young, and it changed my world, It's just one of those things where it was, I've never seen anything like this before, and look at it, it's amazing type of thing, It didn't, like, I left the theater, I wasn't just like, oh, what are we going to go do now, have ice cream? I was like, wow, what did I just experience? Like, I just lived it, and so it's always stuck with me that way, I think.
Okay, I'm going to have to jump on the 5 train, too, for that same reason of... Like, if I were to be completely unbiased about it, I'd probably do 4.5 as well. But I think, like Sarah said that, so I'm not going to say much more like that. Well, I'll say that it's the movie that made me want to make movies. That along with the other 2 Star Wars movies. I watched those all the way through when I was 5 years old, and I never looked back type thing. But also I think it came out at a time in movie making where it was very pessimistic, and there's a lot of great movies that were made back then, but they're very pessimistic, and they were kind of just all going on a down slump, and Star Wars was just like a bright shining beacon that's like, you can still make movies like this,
like a New Hope.
yeah New Hope.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
And hopefully Transcend Entertainment can do that kind of a similar thing. But that's a high bar to reach.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Anyway, if you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted clips from Criss Cross and our sister show, Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Transcend Entertainment. That's TRANSCEND Entertainment. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening to the CRISS CROSS Cinema Podcast.
But you wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it